He didn't just crash the wedding, he turned the CEO's I do into a digital declaration of war, exposing a $5 million embezzlement and serving divorce papers faster than the champagne could pop. In just 90 frantic seconds, the celebration of power and wealth unraveled into chaos. The opulent, sun-drenched ballroom suddenly silenced. The air, thick with the smell of jasmine and impending ruin, became the stage for a revelation no one could have imagined.
Ethan Bellwether was only 28, but the weight on his shoulders made him feel decades older. Once a rising star in cybersecurity, he had been cast out of the corporate world after daring to expose internal breaches at a powerful tech firm. Branded a whistleblower, he was blacklisted, his reputation shredded, his career prospects reduced to scraps. Now he scraped by as a freelance analyst, but the bills piled higher than his income, and the shadows of eviction loomed over his small apartment. Yet none of that compared to the fear gnawing at him every time he looked at his younger sister, Maya. 16 years old, fragile and fading fast, she needed an experimental medical procedure that insurance refused to cover. The cost was astronomical, and every day without it pushed her closer to the edge. Ethan carried the guilt like a chain. Since their parents' deaths, he had sworn to protect her, but all he could offer now was desperation. The landlord's threats echoed in his voicemail. The hospital's invoices arrived like clockwork, each one a reminder of his failure. Ethan's nights were sleepless, haunted by the thought that he was losing Maya, that he was powerless to save her. He blamed himself for everything: the instability, the poverty, the hopelessness. Then one night, his encrypted inbox lit up with a message that felt like a trap and a lifeline all at once. Attached were damning financial files, detailed beyond belief, and a single instruction: target Emerald Bride at the upcoming Sinclair Hawthorne wedding. Alongside it, a blueprint of the CEO's security systems. It was a challenge to his skills, a temptation to his conscience. Ethan knew he couldn't ethically accept, but he also knew he couldn't afford to ignore it. 3 weeks before the wedding, Ethan found himself in a dimly lit rooftop bar in downtown New York City, the kind of place where secrets were traded more often than drinks. The city lights flickered below, but up here, the air was heavy with tension. He had come to meet the mysterious figure who had reached out through the encrypted channel, the one who had set his life on a collision course with the Sinclair Hawthorne empire. From the shadows emerged a woman, elegant and commanding, her presence impossible to ignore. She introduced herself as Evelyn Vance, though she was better known in whispers as the Oracle. Dressed in a tailored suit that spoke of old money and sharper ambition, she slid into the seat across from him, her eyes piercing through his defenses. Her offer was surreal as it was irresistible: $750,000, guaranteed and untraceable for a single act. No violence, no weapons, just a digital intervention during the wedding reception. All he had to do was broadcast preloaded information onto the ceremonial screens. She promised justice would be served, and more importantly, that his sister would walk free from the grip of her illness. Ethan's voice trembled as he asked about the risks, the legality, the consequences. Evelyn leaned closer, her words cutting like glass. "You see your sister's face on those hospital papers, Ethan. This money is the only key. The Sinclairs destroyed my family years ago. Their perfect facade ends now. Are you a man of principle or a man who saves his family?" Before he could respond, she slid a flash drive across the table. Then, without another word, she vanished into the night.
Maya's condition took a terrifying turn. One night, Ethan rushed her to the hospital after she collapsed, her body too weak to fight anymore. The doctor's words were blunt, merciless. Without the experimental procedure, her chances were slipping away fast. Time was no longer a luxury, it was a countdown. Ethan stood in the sterile hallway, the fluorescent lights buzzing above him, feeling the walls close in. As if fate wanted to twist the knife deeper, his former boss called the very next day. The offer was simple: his old job back, steady pay, but only if he signed a non-disclosure agreement that would bury the truth about the data breaches he had once exposed. It was a lifeline wrapped in chains, a chance to survive at the cost of his integrity. Ethan locked himself inside his apartment, pacing like a caged animal. His mind was a battlefield. On one side, his unshakable code, never to use his skills for crime, never to compromise his principles. On the other, Maya's pale face, her fragile breaths, the knowledge that without him, she would die. He asked himself over and over, was he a criminal if his crime saved a life? Was he betraying himself, or finally embracing the only path left? 2 sleepless nights later, his decision crystallized. He loaded the encrypted files and his custom-coded script onto the flash drive. The evidence didn't just expose Eleanor Sinclair's embezzlement, it revealed a vast, festering corruption. Ethan chose Maya, and in choosing her, he chose to unleash the truth, no matter the cost. The Sinclair estate loomed like a fortress of wealth and secrets, its sprawling halls lined with priceless art and guarded by silent staff whose eyes seemed to follow every movement. The atmosphere was suffocating, the kind of luxury that felt less like comfort and more like control. Ethan, disguised as an AV technician, moved carefully through the labyrinth of corridors, his every step shadowed by the weight of hidden cameras and the constant presence of private security. The air itself seemed heavy with suspicion, as though the walls were listening. Eleanor Sinclair, the bride, radiated a strange, brittle cheerfulness. Her laughter was too sharp, her gestures too rehearsed. Ethan noticed how often her hand darted to her diamond bracelet, a nervous tick betraying the storm beneath her polished exterior. Across the room, Mr. Hawthorne, the CEO, stood like a statue carved from stone, his voice low and clipped as he whispered to his head of security. Ethan caught fragments of their exchange, like, "The offshore accounts are clean, right? She won't find it." The words lodged in his mind like a blade. Then, fate handed him a clue. Near the main screen's control console, Eleanor dropped a small silver locket, engraved and worn with age. Ethan bent quickly, pocketing it before anyone noticed. Later, in a quiet corner, he opened it, expecting a photo. Instead, he found a tiny, faded receipt folded inside. A transfer dated just days after Evelyn Vance's family lost their company. It wasn't just a trinket. It was the missing piece, the final proof tying Eleanor to the ruin that had sparked Evelyn's vendetta. The puzzle was complete, and the truth was darker than Ethan had imagined.
The locket's hidden receipt shattered any lingering doubts. It wasn't just evidence of Eleanor Sinclair's greed, it was proof that she had orchestrated the downfall of Evelyn Vance's family years ago. She hadn't been a passive accomplice. She had been the architect, pulling strings from within Hawthorne's firm to siphon wealth and bury rivals. The $5 million embezzlement about to be revealed was only the latest in a long pattern of betrayal, a legacy of corruption dressed in diamonds and silk. As the wedding ceremony began, the guests leaned forward, expecting vows of eternal love. Instead, Ethan triggered the hack. The main screen flickered, then cut abruptly from the smiling couple to a scrolling forensic report, line after damning line of financial transactions. Gasps filled the ballroom as the data poured across the screen, each number a nail in Eleanor's coffin. Then, with chilling precision, a holographic projection of divorce papers appeared, hovering above the altar like a ghostly verdict. The room froze as Evelyn's pre-recorded voice echoed through the speakers, trembling but resolute. She recounted the crimes, the destruction of her father's company, the false imprisonment that had stolen his final years. Her words were raw, filled with grief, sharpened into fury. Eleanor's mask cracked. She let out a piercing shriek, her hands clawing at the bracelets she had clung to all night. The truth was undeniable now. Evelyn's motive was not simple revenge. It was the culmination of a decade-long pursuit of justice, a desperate attempt to reclaim her father's honor. The locket had been the key, and Ethan had turned it in the lock.
Amidst the chaos, Ethan executed his escape plan with precision. As the ballroom erupted in screams and confusion, he slipped through the back service corridors, his technician disguise shielding him from suspicion. At the control console, he had already wiped his digital fingerprints clean, replacing the incriminating flash drive with a harmless decoy. Outside, the estate's security network faltered, disrupted by a pre-timed server overflow Ethan had unleashed across the city. For a few precious minutes, the Sinclair fortress was blind, and that was all he needed. In the quiet of a darkened alley, Ethan's phone buzzed. A single message from the Oracle appeared. "Justice served. Check your account." With trembling hands, he logged into the offshore portal. The numbers glowed on the screen. $750,000, transferred and secure. Relief washed over him, but it was laced with unease. He had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The fallout was immediate. News cameras captured Mr. Hawthorne outside the estate, his composure shattered, his empire unraveling in real time. Eleanor Sinclair was arrested the following morning, federal agents leading her away in handcuffs as headlines screamed of embezzlement and fraud. The daughter, freed from the marriage by the swift delivery of divorce papers, sent Evelyn an anonymous note of gratitude. For Ethan, the victory was personal. Maya received the life-saving procedure, her fragile body finally given a chance to heal. Watching her recover, Ethan knew the price of his actions could never be measured in money alone. He had saved his sister, exposed corruption, and ignited a reckoning that would ripple far beyond the Sinclair name.
Ethan emerged from the storm a changed man. Once he had clung to a rigid sense of right and wrong, a binary code that guided every decision. But the wedding, the hack, the exposure, it had shown him that life was not written in absolutes. True ethics sometimes demanded sacrifice, sometimes demanded breaking the very rules he had sworn to uphold. He no longer saw himself as a fallen whistleblower or a desperate brother. He was something else now, a protector, forged in fire and compromise. The silver locket, once a symbol of Eleanor's greed, became something different in his hands. He placed it in a safety deposit box alongside Evelyn's final message, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of the cost of silence, of the power of truth, and of the thin line between justice and vengeance. It was a weight he would carry, but also a compass pointing him forward. With Maya recovering, her laughter returning to the small apartment that had once been filled with fear, Ethan found clarity. He launched a pro bono security firm, the Oracle Shield, dedicated to exposing corporate corruption and protecting those crushed under its weight. It was his way of honoring Evelyn's fight, of ensuring her father's story would not be repeated. One afternoon, as Maya read peacefully on a park bench, Ethan opened an unsigned letter. To the man who chose family over fear. The world needs more truth-tellers. The past is a shadow. The future is code. Keep hacking. He folded it carefully, a quiet fire burning in his chest. The crusade was only beginning. Sometimes the biggest heroes are the ones who dare to expose the truth from the darkest corners. Ethan risked everything. His freedom, his reputation, his moral code, to save the one person who mattered most. His story is a reminder that justice often comes at a price, and that love can drive us to cross lines we never imagined. What lines would you cross for justice, for family, for truth? The tangled web of corporate crime and personal sacrifice makes you wonder, who was the real villain in this story? Hit the like button if you believe the money was justified. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to Shadow Files for more true tales of digital vengeance and extraordinary moral dilemmas. Stay safe, stay ethical, and always look deeper than the surface of the screen. Until the next expose, this is Shadow Files, signing off.